Good evening, just gone 8 PM, 1 hour late tonight because of the press conference. This is a brand new week. My name's Toby Lopati Mesme, and this is Monday, the 22nd of February 2021's edition of MesmePolitics. Welcome along. Don't worry, all will be back to normal, 7 PM tomorrow. But Boris Johnson was speaking and we were listening. Welcome along. Coming up over the next half hour, we will be talking about Starmerism, about Rishi Sunak's tax rises, about the idea of a federal jobs guarantee in the States, the exposing of Governor Cuomo. But first, Boris Johnson is unlocking. Will it really be all over by June? You can get in touch throughout in the chat. Come say hello. My name's Toby Lopati Mesme. This is MesmePolitics, and we are going to be bringing you all the latest in UK and US politics from a unique leftist perspective for the next half hour. And as I say, big news today, big developments and big news. So Boris Johnson has revealed the government is aiming to remove all of England's restrictions on social contact by the 21st of June at the earliest. The Prime Minister unveiled a roadmap of 4 stages for easing the coronavirus lockdown, with 5 weeks in between each one. Confirmed the first stage of easing restrictions will take place in 2 weeks' time on the 8th of March. And that will, of course, be all of schools. Socialising with one person in a park or public space will also be allowed. And by 29th of March, this will be extended to up to 6 people or 2 households, with gatherings permitted in private gardens. Here's the Prime Minister in the House of Commons.
Essential retail will reopen, as will personal care, including hairdressers and nail salons.
Sorry about that. A quick problem with the Prime Minister's audio there. Here you go.
2. Non-essential retail will reopen, as will personal care, including hairdressers, I'm glad to say, and nail salons. Indoor leisure facilities such as gyms will reopen, as will holiday lets, but only for use by individuals or household groups. We will begin to reopen our pubs and restaurants outdoors, and honourable members will be relieved there will be no curfew, and the Scotch egg debate will be over because there will be no requirement for alcohol to be accompanied by a substantial meal. Zoos, theme parks and drive-in cinemas will reopen, as will public libraries and community centres. Step 3 will begin no earlier than the 17th of May. Provided the data satisfies the 4 tests, most restrictions on meetings outdoors will be lifted, subject to a limit of 30, and this is the point when you will be able to see your friends and family indoors, subject to the Rule 6 or the meeting of 2 households. We will also reopen pubs and restaurants indoors, along with cinemas and children's play areas, hotels, hostels and B&Bs, theatres and concert halls will reopen their doors. And the turnstiles of our sports stadia will once again rotate, subject in all cases to capacity limits depending on the size of the venue. And we will pilot larger events using enhanced testing with the ambition of further easing of restrictions in the next step. Step 4 will begin no earlier than the 21st of June. With appropriate mitigations, we will aim to remove all legal limits on social contact, and on weddings and other life events, we will reopen everything up to and including nightclubs, and enable large events such as theatre performances above the limits of Step 3, potentially using testing to reduce the risk of infection.
And here's the Prime Minister at the press conference an hour ago.
Levels of infection are still high, and we must strike a very careful balance and always accept that we've got to be humble in the face of nature. But also, we must accept that we cannot persist indefinitely with restrictions that have separated families and loved ones for too long, threatened the livelihoods of millions, kept pupils out of school. It's thanks to the rollout of these vaccinations, many of them pioneered in this country, that the balance of that judgment is now changing in our favour. And thanks to the vaccinations, that there is light ahead, leading us to a spring and a summer which I think will be seasons of hope, looking and feeling incomparably better for us all, and from which we will not go back. Thank you very much.
Joining
Levels
me
of
now
infection.
for the first time on here to discuss the unlocking agenda the Prime Minister unveiled is our political correspondent, Theo Bird. Hello.
Well, it's very good to be back. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you on. So, getting into the nitty-gritty, do you think these measures, broadly, the Tory party, Johnson's backbenchers, will they be happy with them?
I think Johnson. It depends. Johnson's backbenchers seem to be quite factionalised on this, and I think the biggest resistance to lockdown measures has been from Tory backbenchers and even some insiders in the cabinet, such as the new business secretary. So I think if anyone's not going to support this, yes, it will be large swathes of his own backbenchers.
Do you think it's likely we could see swathes, like, say, 60 was the number I heard, 60 Tory MPs voting against this, meaning there'd need to be Labour votes to vote through anything that needed to be voted on? Doesn't look like there will be anything to be voted on, but in theory you'd need Labour votes to get something through, any further measures in the House of Commons, or do you think they'll sort of, at the moment, back down off that?
So you mean measures, new imposed measures?
If anything needs to change or anything further needs to pass, do you think there could be a Tory rebellion of say, 60 MPs, like we're hearing briefed?
Yes, I do think there could be a Tory rebellion that only looks one way, and that's out of lockdown, and that has, through the past year, sort of disregarded any new things that have come up, new strains, new outbreaks, second waves, and has always just, again, looked one way, and that was out of lockdown, out of measures, anti-mandate, anything, restrictive.
Okay.
So I don't see why they would kind of stray away from that, especially now that the government has claimed success on the vaccines.
Yeah, they've boxed themselves into a hole, and they're obviously thinking that this is it, because we've heard behind the scenes a lot of talk of this is make or break for Johnson. Basically, he's saved himself politically, but he can't take any more disasters. Do you think Boris Johnson's position as Prime Minister is in peril if this ends with a huge spike and another lockdown?
It certainly would be. Again, you say this is make or break. I totally agree. Again, the last year has not been good, and especially this year with the hitting the mark of 100,000 deaths. The way out of that a roadmap out of that straight away, then failing just a month after we hit 100,000 deaths is politically disastrous. And I think just the reaction from those around him, from journalists, from the opposition, from the rest of the Tory party, the kind of consensus that this is the end of Boris Johnson, if that were to happen, I think is already brewing.
Right, and they're just on the precipice of that. Do you think, considering we've seen a big bounce off the back of the vaccine rollout, which is obviously thanks to the NHS, but the government of the day, as usual in these sort of things, will get the credit. We're seeing that. We're seeing Johnson's ratings go up. We're seeing the Tories clearly taking over Labour and being well ahead, 4, 5, 6 points in the polls. Do you think this roadmap, so far, sort of the confidence it projects, will boost the Tories further, or will it not have an effect?
If it goes to plan, definitely, as we've seen, if a vaccine rollout, as you said, on behalf of the NHS is going to boost the government's credit ratings, then of course. But it does seem calculated, but again, it depends on the kind of small amount of data that's been gained in the vaccine. It depends on that. So I think if it were to go well, then yes, because again we've seen the good successes of the NHS. The government accredited with that.
Of course. And final question, do you think right now, let's assume nothing goes horrifically wrong heading forward on this, let's assume it goes to plan, does the Labour Party actually have any credible attack lines left, or are they pretty much functionally irrelevant except nitpicking certain details for now? Is there nothing they can really hit Johnson with?
I mean, I don't think. I mean, from last year, what we saw from Starmer's Labour was a kind of not much nitpicking on details and wanting to work with the Johnson government. In terms of, if we're going to talk, political dirt on this government, they have the entire of last year, eat out to help out, the in and out of lockdown, the what was considered by most, disastrous handling of the pandemic generally, just because at some point they stepped it up, because of a vaccine. And if that were to go well, kind of got us out of that. That's still the entire of last year, which is kind of a mess.
Theo Bird, thank you very much for joining us for the first ever time as our political correspondent. We look forward to hearing from you same time tomorrow.
Thanks, Toby.
So, what do I think about all this? Well, first of all, I think this is a huge bloody risk on schools. They're not working with the teachers' unions. They're not being sensible. We're going bam, straight in, millions of children right across the country. Of course, they're not at sufficient risk to be worried about it, but they spread the virus. That is the biggest worry. That is what I am concerned about. It's a huge bloody risk. Why can't we do this like grown-ups? Prioritise it. Obviously, it's the first thing. But do it gradually, so we don't have the risk of this pushing R above 1 and causing a whole fiasco and basically a lockdown again, or a closure of schools again. This is clearly Johnson's being more cautious. The focus on data is welcome. The focus on a 5-week review is excellent. 5-week review before each shift, so we know if we need to backpedal a bit. That's what was missing last time. I think that's really welcome because it means we know if we fucked up, basically. But I do think there'll be political hell to pay if we go into another lockdown, save a dramatic change of circumstance on variants. I think the blame will be pinned on Johnson, save one of those dramatic turns of events, and that'll be the end of his premiership as Prime Minister. They're hinging this entirely on vaccines. The vaccines have turned out, they wavered a bit, turned out they were the saviour after all. We all panicked a bit, myself included. But the vaccines are basically being treated as the guardian angel here, our glorious saviour. It might just work. If things are if the wind blows in the right way, things pay off, a couple of shaky things turn out alright, this might just work. And we might just be living in a relatively normal world by June. However, there are so many pitfalls, so many issues that may derail that. Let's not jump for joy, but let's be tentatively optimistic. Dismissal, which we heard from Johnson earlier, of a zero COVID strategy in the House of Commons may bite Johnson in the arse, because that may be the only way to sustainably have what we want to have in June. And the dismissal, the ministers sort of playing dumb, pretending they don't know what zero COVID is, or treating it like a utopian fallacy when we've seen Vietnam, New Zealand, all sorts of nations around the world. Not sensible, and they need to grow up and start looking at that. But those are my thoughts on the matter. Meanwhile, Andrew Cuomo, and yes, because we're over to the States now, because the sort of liberal media won't talk about this much, I am having to read to you from the New York Post. Do forgive me, but this bit is accurate. 11 elected members of the New York State Democratic Party have submitted a resolution to censure Governor Andrew Cuomo over his coronavirus nursing home scandal, including covering up the true number of deaths among nursing home residents from the killer virus, protecting medical facilities from legal liability for negligence, and threatening lawmakers for criticising his policies. The resolution is yet another headache for Cuomo in the mushrooming scandal. As governor, Cuomo is the de facto head of the New York Democratic Party. Democratic lawmakers in Albany have submitted legislation to curb Cuomo's emergency powers and even accused him of obstruction of justice over a nursing home death report, a claim he vehemently denies. Republican lawmakers, meanwhile, have proposed an impeachment commission to oust Cuomo, who is expected to run for a 4th term next year. And the state Senate on Monday is expected to pass a package of bills to bolster nursing home safety and accountability. 7 of the 11 Democratic signers of the censure resolution are from New York City. Here is Ron Kim talking about how Cuomo helped his donors shield nursing home executives from legal consequences, then hid the information about nursing home deaths. Have a listen to him here.
And for 10 minutes, he berated me, he yelled at me, he told me that my career will be over. He's been biting his tongue for months against me. And I had tonight, not tomorrow, tonight, to issue a new statement essentially asking me to lie and asking me, like, I heard and I saw a crime the other day. And he's asking me that I did not see that crime. And that was the line that a line that he crossed that can't be undone. And that's why I had no choice but to come out and speak up. As the chair of the Asian Committee in the State Assembly, it's my job to investigate. It's my job to ask these tough questions, and I shouldn't be punished for doing my job.
Let's be absolutely clear here. Andrew Cuomo is a fraud. Andrew Cuomo is a bully. He's no better than Donald Trump. He just looks more handsome on TV and more statesmanlike. He deserves anyone remotely progressive or anyone decent utter contempt. And I'd appreciate it if blue check liberal Twitter stopped simping over him. I didn't think I'd ever use the word simp on here. Don't really agree with the word simp. But that's the only way I can put it. The people are like, oh my god, he's so amazing, dreamy Cuomo. No, he's a bully. He's a corrupt bully. You don't like Donald Trump. Don't like Andrew Cuomo either. Be consistent. Don't just be, that one's orange, I don't like him. That one's sort of fit. Therefore, haven't got a problem with him. We've had minimal coverage of this. It's been kept relatively quiet. It took me a while to find any clips from CNN or MSNBC on this. Obviously, they've covered it. They're keeping it, if this was Trump, can you imagine? Rachel Maddow would be sort of chomping at the bit to do a 3-week extravaganza of shows on it. The liberal sunglasses through which much of the progressive establishment, if you like, the establishment progressives look at, who often aren't very progressive, look at Cuomo, disguises a dire right-wing record of deregulation, of neoliberalism, of corruption, and of callousness, and of the placing of profit above the value of human life during his governorship. He should be stopped. Someone needs to primary him. Someone needs to stop him. Meanwhile, Democratic Representative Ayanna Pressley is proposing that the federal government guarantee every American a job, as millions are still grappling with the impact of the COVID pandemic. Pressley, on Thursday, on Thursday she did this, introduced a resolution in the US House that calls on the government to make having a job a legal right and to create public works programs as a means to bring that about, saying a federal jobs guarantee would address the current unemployment crisis, make our economy more resilient, begin to close the racial and gender income gaps, and lay the foundation for a truly just and equitable economic recovery. What should we think about this? This should have always been the case. When we were dealing with the stagflation crisis in the 70s, instead of Reaganism, the real solution would have been big, bold ideas like this. Some people espoused those in the Democratic Party, but they lost out. That should have been the direction people went. And maybe Reaganism wouldn't have happened. And now, it's absolutely something we should look at. Big, bold ideas could fix a whole lot when it comes to the systemic issues within the US labour market and the US economy. Big, bold policies like this, when you get them passed, would overnight transform millions of lives. Millions upon millions upon millions of lives for the better. And that is really something we need to see. That is really something we should all be fighting for. Have a listen to Andrew Cuomo here before we wrap up on America, arguing with the reporter.
The other day you said, this is the city's decision, they have an agreement at 3%. Today you said, well, I might have to impose an orange zone and I might have to close the schools, which an orange zone does. So what's going on? Does the city still have the ability to close its schools? Are you now taking control and saying that you have the power to make this decision? And for the millions of parents who want to know, are the schools going to open tomorrow in New York City?
All right. First of all, let's try not to be obnoxious and offensive in your tone, because you're 100% wrong. We announced the orange zone law over a month ago. I don't know if you were here or if you were paying attention, but that has been in effect for over a month. It always said, if by the state's numbers you hit 3%, the schools close.
Oh yeah, I changed my mind. He's nothing like Trump, is he? honestly. Over to the UK. There's a lot to discuss. First, Keir Starmer on LBC. So, over the weekend, Keir Starmer was asked about the blatant corruption of Matt Hancock, the blatant cronyism. Should he stay on as Health Secretary? Have a listen.
A really simple question for you. Matt Hancock has been found to have acted unlawfully over not publishing these COVID contracts. Should he resign?
I don't want to call for him to resign. I do think he's wrong about the contracts. There's been a lot of problems with the contracts on transparency, on who the contracts have gone to, and there's been a lot of wasted money. And I think that is a real cause for concern. But at the moment, at this stage of the pandemic, I want all government ministers working really hard to get us through this because, you know, whatever political differences, what the public know is this needs to succeed. The vaccine rolled out needs to succeed. And I think in those circumstances, what I'd say to Matt Hancock is you need to, go further on the vaccine, go faster on the vaccine. You need to have a roadmap on Monday from the Prime Minister. But I think at this stage, calling for people to resign is not what the public really want to see.
How useless. Meanwhile, on LBC, someone pulled him up on it.
I wanted to know why didn't Sir Keir actually agree that the health minister should resign, considering the recent judgment? And what is his opinions on cronyism? And also, what does he think about people saying, this is not me saying this, but people saying that he tap dances for the Tories?
OK, as 2 points there. This is a High Court ruling on Friday. The Department of Health acted unlawfully by failing to publish billions of pounds of COVID contracts. Some of your colleagues, and these are named for a change, Claudia Webb, Richard Bergen, think Matt Hancock should resign. David Lammy seemed to join in with that. Your view on that, and then I have to ask you, are you a tap dancer? But come to that first, if you would, Sir Keir.
Anna, look,
should Matt Hancock resign?
Anna, we've challenged the government uphill and down dale on cronyism. Rachel Reeves gave a very big speech on this 2 or 3 weeks ago. We've raised it in Parliament over and over again. Where are the contracts going? How much money is being sprayed at them? And critically, when they don't deliver, why don't you ask for some of the money back? So we've attacked them hard on that.
So we've got an opposition that is effectively toothless. You know, all the comparisons to New Labour. Not a patch on Tony Blair in terms of the eloquent and forensic way Tony Blair ripped into the John Major government at the time. A highly effective, highly skilled orator, owned the House of Commons, decimated the Prime Minister at the time before winning a landslide majority. Pointed at them shouting, weak, weak, weak. We don't see that from Keir Starmer. Absolutely toothless. And he's not going to shape public opinion in any way. He's going to capitulate to the Tories because what we're seeing here, we might offend people by calling for him to resign. It's essentially saying we're going to follow what the focus groups tell us. We're going to follow what these unaccountable people behind a glass screen tell us. So we don't offend people. And that means nothing out the box will ever be said. You are surrendering the cause of opposition, your duty in this country. You're surrendering that because you're worried you might offend some people. And then we had some drivel about patriotism. When you say you're patriotic, you're clearly not, because you're trying too hard. It just sounds forced. Have a listen.
Earlier this month, it was reported that a branding organisation called Republic had suggested you and your colleagues should use the union flag more and dress smartly. Is that part of the rebranding that will put Labour back on track, Sir Keir?
Well, that was some of the findings they had from a focus group that they ran. It wasn't actually our strategy document, as people have said.
Yeah, branding.
But I mean, I don't have any problem at all with the Union Jack. It is I want to be the Union flag. I want to be the Prime Minister of the United
But I never
Kingdom.
see one behind you when I hear you talk, nor Annalise Dodds, and when I have government ministers on, they're always surrounded with, well, that's ridiculous. Priti Patel likes at least two. Others always have a flag fluttering, but no Labour.
No, that's wrong, actually. When I do my addresses to the nation and my press conferences, we do have a flag. And
this is what we're talking about. 120, 130,000 deaths down. This is what we're talking about. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer taking a law and order stance on drugs.
Of the single market, and we're at a different place now.
How about drugs? Do you think there's a case for decriminalising cannabis possession?
I've never subscribed to that view. When I was Director of Public Prosecutions, I prosecuted many, many cases, or my team did, involving drugs and drug gangs and the criminality that sits behind. And it causes huge issues to vulnerable people across the country. So I've never gone down that route. There were some initiatives in some parts of the country where cautions were given for low-level crimes. I think there may be something in that. But in principle, I've seen too much of the damage that sits behind drugs for...
I mean, the damage is an argument against criminalisation. We've got to remember, even Corbyn's drug policy was very much too punitive. But the rhetoric here, it's unprogressive on its face. That was the most law and order right-wing response you could think of. I prosecuted people. Really worrying, really concerning. I think we need to remind Labour this is not the 1990s. Positioning yourself to the right of the Tory party, as we're going to talk about in a minute, is not the way into number 10. That will not in any way get you into number 10. Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, is set to use the upcoming March budget to announce a pathway for increasing corporation tax. The move will come as a bid to help repair damaged finances in the UK as the COVID pandemic continues to wreak havoc on the economy. The Finance Minister is not expected to implement the hike immediately, but increase it by 1 percentage point in the autumn, taking it to 23% over the course of the Parliament, each percentage point raising £3 billion for the Treasury. This is what's going on. It's a strange world we're living in, okay? So the Tories are finally breaking free of the box they put themselves in since Thatcher. And they are being pragmatic, and they are thinking big about how they're going to shape the political economy in this country. They are politicising economics again. They are on the precipice off the back of this success. Love them or loathe them. Of course I loathe them. And most of my generation loathe them. They are on the precipice of establishing, for the next decade, a new Labour-type hegemony. They will win a couple more elections with a landslide, easily. There's talk of a 2022 election, if they think that's how they'll get their mandate, and they'll be in for till 2027 then, with probably gaining seats off Labour. The Starmer project is dead, right? It is basically dead now. The thing we all have to look at, really, is what will we build once the Starmer project crashes and burns at the election. The left has to be ready. And I truly think, this man is the man to do it.
I have to say also, my only real word of advice to Keir as well, let's unite the party as he promised. And that does mean, giving the whip back to Jeremy Corbyn. Let's unite the party so we can move on and really be an effective opposition, holding this government to account but presenting an alternative. And also, the way we are at the moment, doing everything we can to support those people who are suffering so much under this government.
I think John McDonnell should, don't know if he will, he's a stubborn guy, should challenge the right of the party for the leadership when we're all fighting over the ashes of Keir Starmer after he crashes and burns when he goes to the country. And the left have to have very clear, articulatable answers to why Starmer failed and why the left is the answer, not lurching further to the right and having Jess Phillips as leader of the opposition, or Margaret Hodge, or Yvette Cooper, or Rachel Reeves. All of that would be a disaster for progressive politics in this country. John McDonnell is the guy. We're hearing briefing against Annalisa Dodds in The Independent over the weekend, which is very concerning, and the people being touted to replace her are Rachel Reeves, are Yvette Cooper. There was mention of Ed Miliband, but apparently he is seen as not being on the side of business enough. So the position of Shadow Chancellor, Annalisa Dodds has got it. This is really worrying. The left, anyone on the left should defend Annalisa Dodds. The reason is she's of the soft left, right? We've already attacked the left. Starmer's leadership has already attacked the left. Now they're going after the soft left. If Dodds goes, they replace her with someone to the right. Labour's finished, continues to be finished. This would be a disaster. Dodds must be defended, even though she's not perfect. The thing about Ed Miliband being too right-wing for Keir Starmer, too left-wing for Keir Starmer, is really concerning. He'd be excellent, a much better performer on TV than Annalisa Dodds, and pretty much similar politics to her as Shadow Chancellor. The fact he's been dismissed as a candidate. Shows it's an attack on the soft left, not genuine concern about Dodd's performance. I think let Dodd's grow into the role. And, if Ed Miliband is too left-wing for you, you've got problems. Well, that was a jam-packed show. We will be back tomorrow from 7 p.m. That's the time we usually do this. So subscribe, turn notifications on, tell your friends, and join us from 7 p.m. tomorrow for Tuesday. That's right, my friends. That's right, comrades. A whole new week of MesmePolitics with you live every day, 7 p.m. You can email me, tobyjoshua2004@gmail.com. Get me on Twitter, @TobyJoshuaUK, or on Medium, @TobyJoshuaPolitics. You are up to date with all the latest in the last 24 hours and over the weekend in UK and US politics from a unique leftist perspective. Hope your Monday was alright. Enjoy your Tuesday. I'll see you at the end of it. And let's hope everything's fine by June, eh?